I feel unhappy in my relationship. Hello, everyone. I am reaching out to you out of desperation at this point. I never would have thought I will make a post here, but here we go. The thing is, I have been in a relationship for 2.5 years with a woman. We are both women in our early mid-20s. We live in a mid-distance relationship. We don't live in the same town, but we usually meet almost every week, and it's a 45-minute train ride usually. In 2021, we started off as best friends, but we already had some problems with communication and taking things too personally. In a nutshell, we both were in a pretty dark place when we met in our early 20s. Therefore, we had a few arguments over little things. Mostly jealousy, like jealous of the other one for achieving or getting something, low self-esteem issues, etc. But we still fell in love. I personally, because despite my own personal problems of self-esteem issues, I found her a cool person who I could really connect with. Fast forward to almost a year later, 2022. We got together and I feel like our relationship got to a point where it started to get messy. There were lots of ups and downs, lots of arguing, which I know is normal for couples. The relationship itself was loving. We tried our best to support each other and be kind. But I feel like a lot of the problems were pretty heavy and not a sign of a good relationship. She was undoubtedly an avoidant because of her past traumas, which I totally understand, but it really took a toll on my mental health because I never knew what's wrong with her. She would distance herself if I made a small mistake or said something she didn't like or take it out on me instead of communicating it. But first, she was very self-conscious about the fact that I had 2 serious relationships before her. One was with an AFAB person, the other one was with a man. Both of them were pretty unhealthy relationships, and we had lots of arguments about them. I tried to explain to her that it doesn't really matter, because I was mostly a dumb teen and they happened a long time ago. But she always made me feel guilty because I had relationships before her. Like I was already used or am a player because of it, just because she hasn't had a serious relationship before. Anytime I would mention my nightmares about my last relationship, because it was emotionally abusive, she would take it personally and just couldn't stand me even mentioning any past relationships. I know I might have done some mistakes, hurt her with my words, but it wasn't intentional and I always there for her, comfort her, even if I wasn't in a headspace to do that, and I feel like I sacrificed my mental health for her. She had pretty bad mental health. She would often say she will do something to herself anytime an inconvenience happened. She took out her stress on me. She got upset over things I liked, and if I dared to mention something good happened to me, she never seemed to be truly happy for me. She would even make a scene if I mentioned university. I was attending one, but during our start of the relationship I was on hiatus. Also, she would always say I barely mention my problems to her, or my interests. Well, that's because she would barely say anything. Or if she doesn't understand why I like something, she interprets it as bad and embarrassing. It got to a point where while she was at work, I was stressed daily over if she's going to have a good or a bad day. And if it's bad, it means she will be in a bad mood and will say very depressing things. I tried to offer her support and even solutions to everything, but it seemed like she was fine suffering through everything. Also, I was a crippling people pleaser, so I couldn't even say the harsh truth or even leave. One of the biggest events was when her best friend of 5 years started neglecting their friendship. Said friend apparently barely communicated her problems with my GF, and at the end she broke things off with her. I was there for her, but I feel like ever since, she became from avoidant to anxious. Although I thought she just finally eased up a little bit and was able to show her love for me more. But by that I mean I would have to constantly reassure her, text back as soon as possible, meet her every single time. Although I communicated to her that I have other friends and sometimes I want weekends to myself since I'm working and going to school at the same time. She would also take this personally and would think I just don't want to be with her. One time I accidentally left my computer open and I was away, but it made it look like I was reading her messages. She started panicking because this went on for only 30 minutes. She tried to reach me on other platforms, but I didn't see it. She didn't connect the dots that I might just left the chat program open. She immediately thought I'm mad, and when I came back she scolded me that I wasn't considering that she is a sensitive person, and so am I. I'm hypersensitive, but she doesn't seem to acknowledge it, like ever. Last year, 2024, she finally started going to a psychiatrist and a therapist. Prior to this she refused to and was always being hyper-independent. She thought emotions are a sign of weakness, it's embarrassing to ask for help, etc. After our huge argument because I was done with her constant negativity, her not being able to handle stress and taking it out on me, while I was having a fever and really sick, I couldn't go to her place, and it was something she made me feel guilty about it. When she started her healing journey, the change was noticeable, and I thought it's gonna be all fine. I could leave everything behind, and maybe I just needed to learn how to handle a situation like this. Although the damage has been done, since what I was telling you happened weekly, but I tried to forget about it. I'm still not saying I wasn't acting toxic, but I tried my best to change and not to repeat the same thing, and I think I was doing well. Even she said I'm not doing the old bad habits I was doing. She was on meds for a short time, but she really didn't want to do it. Although unfortunately when she was on meds it was easier to talk about my feelings to her. Prior to that she would take it personally and start blaming me, scolding me, etc., just because I mentioned one time she was being distant with me. She started therapy with a really good therapist, which I was happy about. I tried to be understanding to her, and I was so glad she was finally healing. I wouldn't say we didn't have arguments, but they weren't as bad. During this I also started going to a psychiatrist and a therapist, so I thought it's going to be okay from now on. I was wrong. She would start arguments with me because I took my psychiatrist's advice and started also taking meds. Another major event was when I almost broke up with her, because she would always make a big deal about my appearance and my taste in music. She was scared of me changing my style. It felt like she was trying to change my appearance before, by making me more hyperfemme, girly, and pink with very few makeup. I tried it, but I didn't like it, so I started going back to my old style, which was more dark gothic and inspired by J-rock, but still feminine. When I cut my hair into a different style, it wasn't as short, it was like a jellyfish wolf cut style. She made me feel so bad about it. She was the only one who hated it. Everyone else loved it, and so did I. I was so fed up with it, but after I tried breaking things off I backed down and we tried to talk about it instead. It was hard. Lots of crying happened, but it was working for a few months. After 6 months she stopped therapy, which I didn't agree with, but I didn't want to start an argument. I noticed she was slowly going back to her old habits, being negative all the time, being mean about things, which are starting to trigger me into flashbacks of those times I mentioned. This last time, she was having a hard time at work again, would start an unnecessary fight with me and our friends over a series that she doesn't like only because it's getting overhyped, and then started blaming and hating herself in front of everyone. This is something she would regularly do in any group chat she's in. After this she kept being depressed. I tried comforting her again, but this time I had enough, and said I can't always be for her, especially because I spent the weekend with a friend I can barely see. Despite living in the same town, she didn't seem to accept it at first, but right now it looks like we are on good terms again. She is trying her best to handle things better. Although we talked about it, I'm still not calm. I'm starting to feel like the relationship just doesn't feel right because we are so different and have different views and values. She still needs loads of therapy, probably years to function better, and so do I. When I came home from my friend I had a breakdown over how I couldn't relax at all. I had to argue over text messages while I was trying to have a good time with my friend, and I was just wishing I had my old life back where my only concern was school and didn't have drama all the time. If I could have that with her I would be perfectly fine, but it's really hard to manage it. I'm starting to lose hope. But this is not the first time it's happening, therefore I couldn't bear it anymore. This weekend I'm planning on talking to her about how I'm unhappy in this relationship and am just hoping it won't turn into an argument. I'm also going to mention this to my therapist as well. I'm considering giving it 2 to 3 months, but if I feel the same or the cycle doesn't stop, I'm going to have to reconsider my feelings. Although I find her a funny and talented person, I feel like our relationship is just not meant to be anymore, and it still makes me feel sad, but something in me wants to keep fighting for it. TLDR. My girlfriend needs therapy again. I sacrificed my already poor mental health and I feel like our values are different. And even feeling like this, I'm having a hard time leaving her because I love and care about her, and so does she. And am going back and forth because of the good memories we had. Is it worth the work to save the relationship? Sorry if this is a mess. Also, my first language isn't English. Also, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer.